Hey guys, tonight we begin with something complex, if not slightly disturbing, Roman Imperial love. This was where emperors collected boys like trophies, where marriage vows included "till castration do us part," and where half your court was plotting whether you'd be a bride or a corpse by breakfast. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Picture this. You wake up not to an alarm clock, but to the sound of Imperial guards discussing whether today you'll be wearing silk or chains depending on Caesar's mood. Your bed is marble and gold, yes, but it might as well be an altar because everyone around you, your emperor, your handlers, your fellow concubines, is measuring you for sacrifice. Their voices soft as prayer, but sharp as the blade they're sharpening for your dignity. The morning light filters through painted frescoes depicting gods and mortals in various states of divine ecstasy, casting colorful shadows across marble floors that cost more than most people's annual income. Your chambers are magnificent, certainly. Silk curtains embroidered with gold thread that catches the light like captured sunlight, furniture inlaid with ivory and precious stones, carpets from distant provinces soft enough to muffle screams and probably designed for exactly that purpose. "Good morning, beautiful," your keeper whispers, but his eyes don't meet yours because you're not a person. You're imperial property with a pulse, and that's the first sign that today might be your last day, with both your sanity and your manhood intact. His hands are gentle as they help you into a silk tunic that weighs less than a feather but feels heavier than armor. Each fold carefully arranged to display your body like merchandise in Rome's most exclusive market. You're not just any Roman slave, you're a concubine. And in the Roman Empire, that doesn't mean luxury. It means you're the most expensive, most visible, and most disposable plaything in the emperor's collection. Think of it like being the star of a reality show, where the elimination challenge involves actual elimination. And the prize for losing is a very public castration, followed by a lifetime of serving as someone's wife. This isn't the romanticized version of Roman love that Hollywood sold you. There are no passionate affairs between equals, no happily ever after waiting at the end of the story, and definitely no consent. Your emperor is more likely emperor charmingly psychotic, and your palace isn't a dream home. It's a maximum security brothel where the clients are gods and you're the offering. Perhaps the young master would prefer the blue silk today, your dresser suggests. And you realize he's not asking about fashion, he's asking whether you want to look bridal or sacrificial when they drag you to the emperor's chambers. The blue silk brings out your eyes, but the white might be more appropriate for whatever ceremony they're planning, yours. Let's start with the brutal mathematics of Roman concubinage. You didn't choose this life, you were sold into it, probably around age 12, to satisfy an emperor's particular tastes. Your purchase wasn't a transaction of love, it was a business deal where you were the commodity being traded, your previous owner handing you over like livestock priced by beauty, your new master accepting you like property that came with a warranty he fully intended to void through creative use. Your daily routine isn't about education or personal growth, it's about survival. Every morning you wake up and calculate, which emperor am I serving today? Which of my fellow concubines is plotting my downfall? Has my latest performance bought me another few months of life? Or has my failure to please moved me closer to the castration chamber that's being prepared in the basement? The palace around you is a nest of vipers in silk togas and golden jewelry, their smiles sharp as broken glass and twice as dangerous. Everyone bows, everyone calls you beautiful, while simultaneously planning your replacement with the efficiency of a well-organized funeral committee. Your emperor's advisors aren't just political threats, they're actively campaigning for your removal, your continued existence becoming increasingly optional. The boy looks pale today, someone murmurs behind a fan decorated with scenes of mythological rape, and you know they're not expressing concern. They're taking inventory, noting whether you seem weak enough to break or sick enough to blame your death on natural causes when they're done with you. And the most terrifying part, you can't fight back. You can't leave your emperor, you can't run away, you can't even complain too loudly without being accused of ingratitude toward the divine favor of imperial attention. Your only weapons are charm, cunning, and the desperate hope that you can stay beautiful and compliant long enough to survive another day, like a prize songbird who's only valuable as long as his voice doesn't crack. But the real horror isn't the palace. It's the emperor who owns your body and soul, and he's waiting for you at breakfast with a smile that could mean affection or surgical modification, depending on which way his divine mood is blowing this morning. You wake to silk sheets that feel like chains, and that's not poetic license. It's prophecy written in imperial gold thread. The morning light filters through painted frescoes depicting gods and mortals in various states of divine ecstasy, casting colourful shadows across marble floors that cost more than most people's annual income, but feel colder than a tomb beneath your bare feet. Your bed is magnificent, certainly, carved ivory posts that reach toward heaven like prayers you're no longer allowed to make, silk curtains embroidered with gold thread that catches the light like captured sunlight, mattresses stuffed with down from swans that died for your comfort. But it might as well be an altar because everyone around you, your emperor, your handlers, your fellow concubines, is measuring you for sacrifice. Their voice is soft as prayer, but sharp as the blade they're sharpening for your dignity. "Good morning, beautiful," your keeper whispers, but his eyes don't meet yours because you're not a person. You're imperial property with a pulse, and that's the first sign that today might be your last day with both your sanity and your manhood intact. His hands are gentle as they help you into a silk tunic that weighs less than a feather but feels heavier than armor, each fold carefully arranged to display your body like merchandise in Rome's most exclusive market. The morning routine begins with the efficiency of a military operation disguised as luxury. Slaves, other slaves, because that's what you are now, though they call you concubine to make it sound prettier, attend to your every need with the kind of attention usually reserved for prize livestock. They oil your skin until it gleams like polished marble, arrange your hair with the precision of architects building monuments, and paint your face with cosmetics that cost more than a farmer's yearly wages. "The master prefers the blue coal today," one attendant murmurs while applying makeup around your eyes with the concentration of someone defusing a bomb, because in a way, he is. Your appearance isn't just vanity, it's survival. Look too tired, and you might be discarded. Look too eager, and you might be punished for presumption. Look perfect, and you might live another day. Your chambers are luxurious in the way a gilded cage is luxurious, all beauty and no freedom. Frescoes depicting mythological scenes cover the walls, their painted figures frozen in eternal ecstasy or eternal torment, depending on how you interpret divine love. The furniture is inlaid with ivory and precious stones that gleam like tears in the morning light, and carpets from distant provinces are soft enough to muffle screams, which is probably not a coincidence. The irony is breathtaking. You live in a palace with hundreds of rooms, but you're more trapped than any prisoner in the dungeons below. At least prisoners know they're captives. Concubines have to pretend they're grateful for their golden cage while plotting their survival with every breath, smiling graciously while calculating which servant might poison their morning wine. Your morning meal arrives with great ceremony, carried by slaves who bow so low their foreheads nearly touch the marble floor. Silver platters, crystal goblets, servants moving with the choreographed precision of dancers performing for an audience of one. But you know that somewhere in the kitchen, someone has been paid to watch what you eat, how much you eat, and whether you show any signs of illness, pregnancy, or the kind of despair that might lead to inconvenient suicide attempts. The food itself is a masterpiece of imperial excess. Honey cakes from Egypt, wine from Gaul, fruits from provinces you'll never see because you'll never leave this palace alive. Each bite tastes like luxury and feels like ash because you know the price of this breakfast isn't measured in coins but in the freedom you'll never have again. Perhaps the young master would prefer the blue silk today, your dresser suggests, and you realize he's not asking about fashion. He's asking whether you want to look bridal or sacrificial when they drag you to the emperor's chambers. The blue silk brings out your eyes, but the white might be more appropriate for whatever ceremony they're planning. Yours. Speaking of preparation, let's talk about how you got this job, because nobody wakes up one day and decides to become imperial property. The path to your golden cage began long before you ever saw these marble walls. Like Amazon, but for human trafficking, and the return policy involves crucifixion. Your journey to imperial concubinage didn't begin with silk sheets and honey cakes. It began with chains, tears, and the kind of marketplace where children are priced by the pound and sold with less ceremony than livestock. The Roman slave markets are marvels of efficient brutality. where human misery is organized with the same precision Romans apply to their aqueducts and road systems. Picture a vast open square surrounded by stone columns, where merchants display their wares under colourful awnings that flutter in the Mediterranean breeze. Except the wares are people, and the breeze carries the sound of weeping children and desperate parents saying goodbye forever. You arrived here not by choice, obviously, but through one of the many pipelines that fed Rome's insatiable appetite for human property. Maybe your village was raided by slavers who swept through like locusts, taking anyone young and healthy enough to survive the journey. Maybe your family sold you during a famine, trading your childhood for enough grain to keep your siblings alive another season. Maybe you were captured during one of Rome's endless wars, where victory meant glory for the legions and slavery for everyone else. "Fresh stock from Germania," the auctioneer shouts, his voice carrying across the square like a carnival barker advertising exotic animals. And in a way, that's exactly what you are. Exotic merchandise from the barbarian lands beyond civilization, where people have blue eyes and fair skin that Romans find so fascinating, they're willing to pay premium prices for it. The inspection process is thorough and humiliating in ways that would make modern livestock auctions seem dignified. Potential buyers examine your teeth like they're purchasing a horse, check your muscles for signs of strength, and assess your face for the kind of beauty that might please an emperor's particular tastes. They speak about you in the third person while you stand naked on the auction block, discussing your potential like merchants debating the quality of wine or olive oil. "This one has good bone structure," a buyer observes, tilting your chin toward the light with the casual authority of someone examining pottery. "Germanic bloodline, probably. Look at those eyes. Very fashionable in the imperial court these days. The emperor has a preference for northern features." Age is crucial in this marketplace of human misery. Too young, and even Romans have their limits, officially anyway. Too old, and you're destined for the mines or the galleys, where life expectancy is measured in months rather than years. But hit that sweet spot between 12 and 16 and suddenly you're premium merchandise. The kind of investment that might pay off for decades if you're lucky enough to survive the training. The bidding begins with the efficiency of a business transaction, because that's exactly what it is. Wealthy Romans compete for human property with the same enthusiasm they might show for a prized racehorse or a particularly fine statue. Your price climbs higher with each raised hand, and you realize with growing horror that your worth as a human being is being calculated in real time by people who see you as an investment opportunity. "Sold to the representative of the imperial household," the auctioneer declares, "and your fate is sealed with the finality of a judge's gavel. You're no longer a person with a name, a family, or a future of your own choosing. You're imperial property, purchased for a specific purpose that you're about to learn in excruciating detail. The transaction is completed with paperwork that's more thorough than most modern contracts. Bills of sale, ownership transfers, health guarantees. The Romans document everything with the kind of bureaucratic precision that would make modern governments jealous. Your new owner receives a certificate of authenticity, like you're a piece of art being added to a collection. But before you can serve an emperor, you need to be broken in, trained, and molded into the kind of living doll that imperial tastes demand. The slave market was just the beginning of your transformation from human being to imperial plaything. "Stand straighter, smile prettier, die quieter," your trainer commands with the patience of someone who's broken hundreds of boys before you and will break hundreds more after your inevitable replacement. Welcome to the Imperial Training Program, where childhood goes to die and dignity is surgically removed with the precision of a master craftsman. The training facility is a monument to systematic dehumanization disguised as education. Located in a villa outside Rome, it's where the empire's newest acquisitions are processed, polished, and prepared for their roles as living toys for the powerful. Think of it as a finishing school for the damned, where the curriculum includes advanced submission, intermediate seduction, and graduate-level survival. Your instructors are former concubines themselves, men who survived long enough to transition from property to property manager. They know every trick, every technique, every way to please an emperor because they've lived through it all and somehow emerged with their sanity mostly intact. Their eyes carry the hollow look of people who've seen too much and forgotten how to feel anything about it. Forget your name, the head trainer announces on your first day, his voice carrying the authority of someone who's delivered this speech 1,000 times before. Forget your family, your village, your language, your gods. You are Roman property now, and Roman property has no past, only purpose. The physical transformation begins immediately and brutally. Your Germanic clothes are burned in a ceremonial fire, along with any personal possessions that might remind you of your former life. Your hair is cut and styled in the Roman fashion, oiled and arranged to frame your face in ways that emphasize your youth and vulnerability. Your body is scrubbed until your skin gleams, then oiled daily to maintain the kind of luminous perfection that Roman aesthetics demand. But the real training goes deeper than cosmetics. You learn to walk differently, not the confident stride of a free person, but the gliding movement of someone whose body exists for others' pleasure. You practice sitting, standing, and reclining in poses that display your form to maximum advantage while maintaining the illusion of modesty that Roman sensibilities require. Your body is not yours anymore, the trainer explains while adjusting your posture with the clinical detachment of a sculptor working marble. It belongs to Caesar, and Caesar's property must be perfect. Every gesture, every expression, every breath must serve his pleasure. Language lessons are particularly cruel. You're forbidden to speak your native tongue under penalty of severe punishment, forced instead to learn Latin with the kind of intensive immersion that would impress modern language schools if it weren't accompanied by beatings for every mispronounced syllable. But it's not just vocabulary you're learning, it's an entirely new way of thinking, speaking, and existing in the world. The psychological conditioning is perhaps the most insidious part of your education. Through a combination of rewards and punishments, isolation and false intimacy, your trainers systematically break down your sense of self and rebuild it according to Imperial specifications. You learn to anticipate needs before they're expressed, to read moods in the flicker of an eye, to become so attuned to your master's desires that you practically disappear as an individual. You are not a person, the trainer reminds you daily, his words delivered with the repetitive precision of a religious chant. You are a mirror that reflects Caesar's glory, a vessel that holds his pleasure, a tool that serves his needs. The sooner you accept this, the longer you'll survive. Sexual education is conducted with the same clinical efficiency as everything else, taught by instructors who approach the subject like military strategists planning a campaign. You learn techniques that would make modern sex therapists blush, positions that require the flexibility of a circus performer, and the kind of psychological manipulation that turns intimacy into performance art. Now that you're trained, polished, and properly broken, it's time to meet your owner, the divine emperor who purchased your childhood and will determine whether you live as a favored pet or die as a discarded toy. The emperor's gaze feels like being appraised by death itself, and that's not hyperbole, it's prophecy written in imperial gold and sealed with your blood. The summons arrives not as a request, but as a divine command, delivered by a slave whose eyes won't meet yours because you're both property now, just different grades of merchandise in Caesar's collection. The walk to the imperial chambers is a procession through marble corridors that cost more than entire provinces, their walls lined with frescoes depicting gods and mortals in various states of divine ecstasy. Your bare feet whisper against floors polished to mirror perfection, each step echoing like a countdown to your transformation from human being to imperial plaything. Guards in gleaming armor stand at attention, their faces carved from stone and indifference. They've seen this parade before, fresh-faced boys walking toward their first imperial audience, some trembling with fear, others with anticipation, all of them about to discover that in the presence of a god emperor, the difference between worship and violation is purely semantic. The doors to Caesar's private chambers are massive slabs of imported wood, inlaid with ivory and gold, carved with scenes of conquest that serve as both decoration and warning. They swing open with the whispered efficiency of well-oiled hinges, revealing a room that smells like incense, power, and the faint metallic tang of blood from previous audiences that didn't go well. Approach, comes the voice from the shadows, and you realize this is it. The moment your childhood officially ends and your career as imperial property begins. The emperor sits on a chair that's less furniture and more throne, draped in purple silk that costs more than most people's annual income, his fingers adorned with rings that could buy small armies. He's not what you expected somehow. The statues make him look heroic, godlike, carved from marble and divine inspiration. In person, he's just a man, albeit one with absolute power over your life, death, and everything in between. His eyes are calculating, appraising, the look of someone examining livestock at market, except the livestock is you, and the market is your soul. Turn around, he commands, with the casual authority of someone who's never been told no, and you comply because refusal isn't an option when the person speaking can have you crucified before lunch. You rotate slowly, feeling his gaze catalogue every inch of your body, like a merchant taking inventory of valuable goods. The silence stretches like a bowstring, taut with possibility and menace. You can hear your own heartbeat, the whisper of silk against marble, the distant sound of the city beyond these walls where free people go about their lives, unaware that a boy is being evaluated for purchase in the palace above them. Germanic bloodline, he muses, his voice carrying the tone of someone discussing the weather or the quality of wine. Good bone structure. The blue eyes are particularly striking. They'll photograph well in the right light. Except photography won't be invented for another 18 centuries, so he's talking about paintings, mosaics, the artistic record of your degradation. Your trainer was right. You are a mirror designed to reflect Caesar's glory, a vessel crafted to hold his pleasure, a tool shaped to serve his needs. But standing here in the presence of absolute power, you realize the full horror of your situation. You're not just property, you're a living doll, animated by fear and maintained by desperation. Speak, he commands, and you realize this is a test. Your voice, when it comes, sounds strange in your own ears, higher than you remember, softer, already adapting to the role you're being forced to play. You recite the phrases your trainer drilled into you, words of gratitude and submission that taste like ash in your mouth. He smiles, and it's the most terrifying thing you've ever seen because it's genuine. He's pleased with his purchase, satisfied with the product, happy with the investment. You're not a person to him, you're a successful transaction, and his smile is the receipt. But the real nightmare begins when he decides he loves you, because Imperial love isn't affection, it's ownership with poetry, possession with presence, and slavery with silk sheets. Like Vegas wedding, but you're wearing the dress and can't say no, and the honeymoon involves surgical modification of your anatomy. Welcome to Imperial romance, Roman style, where marriage vows include "till castration do us part," and the wedding gifts come with medical disclaimers. Emperor Nero, in his infinite wisdom and finite sanity, has decided that what the empire really needs is a royal wedding, not his own. He's already married to Poppaea, who serves the useful function of producing heirs and looking appropriately imperial at state functions. No, this wedding is for you, his beloved concubine, his precious pet, his living doll who needs to be made more doll-like through creative surgery. The preparations begin weeks in advance because apparently even forced marriages require event planning. The imperial seamstresses, women whose job description includes enabling the emperor's psychological breaks from reality, design a wedding dress that would make modern brides weep with envy if they could ignore the circumstances of its wearing. Silk imported from China, pearls from the Red Sea, gold thread spun by craftsmen who probably don't want to know what they're contributing to. The dress is beautiful, elaborate, and designed to display your body like merchandise, while maintaining the fiction that this is a celebration rather than a public humiliation disguised as ceremony. The emperor wishes to honor you with marriage, your keeper explains while helping you into the bridal costume, his voice carrying the tone of someone announcing a funeral while pretending it's a birthday party. You should be grateful for such divine favor. The irony isn't lost on you that gratitude is expected for your own legal enslavement. The ceremony itself is a masterpiece of Roman theater, complete with priests, witnesses, and enough incense to choke a temple. The forum is decorated with flowers and banners, the crowd gathered to witness this historic moment when an emperor marries his male concubine in a public display of power that would make modern dictators take notes. Nero appears in his finest imperial regalia, purple and gold, and radiating the kind of confidence that comes from knowing you can execute anyone who objects to your life choices. He looks genuinely happy, which is somehow more disturbing than if he looked cruel. This isn't malice, it's love, Imperial style, where affection is expressed through ownership and devotion is demonstrated through degradation. Do you take this emperor as your husband? The priest asks, and you realize this is the moment your last shred of dignity dies a public death. Your voice, when you speak the required words, sounds like it's coming from someone else, someone who's already dead inside and is just going through the motions of breathing. The crowd cheers because apparently watching a boy's soul get murdered in real time is considered entertainment in the Roman Empire. Coins are thrown, wine is poured, and somewhere in the distance a poet is probably composing verses about the beauty of imperial love that will make future generations vomit. But the real ceremony isn't the wedding, it's what comes after, when Nero takes you to the private chambers where the marriage will be consummated, and your transformation from boy to wife will be completed through procedures that would make modern surgeons reach for the whiskey. Speaking of surgical procedures, let's discuss Roman medicine and why you should probably start praying to whatever gods might be listening, because you're about to need all the divine intervention you can get. The bronze knife gleams in torchlight, and you know what comes next. Welcome to Roman medicine, where the cure is often worse than the disease. The doctors are basically butchers with better marketing, and anesthesia is just a word that won't be invented for another 18 centuries. The chamber where your manhood will die is surprisingly clean by Roman standards, which is to say it's been swept recently, and the bloodstains from the previous patient have been mostly scrubbed away. Stone walls, marble table, bronze instruments that gleam with the kind of polish that suggests they're used frequently and maintained with professional pride. Your surgeon, if we can dignify him with that title, is a Greek slave who's performed this procedure hundreds of times. He's efficient, experienced, and completely indifferent to your terror because to him, you're just another job, another body on the table, another set of organs to be modified according to imperial specifications. Drink this, he commands, offering you a cup of wine mixed with opium and herbs that might dull the pain, or might just make you hallucinate while you're being mutilated. It's the closest thing to anesthesia available in the 1st century, and it's about as effective as hoping really hard that it won't hurt too much. The restraints are leather and iron, designed to hold struggling patients while procedures are performed. You're strapped down with the efficiency of someone who's done this many times before, your arms and legs secured so thoroughly that you can barely breathe, let alone escape what's about to happen to you. The emperor wishes you to be perfect, the surgeon explains while examining his instruments with the care of an artist selecting brushes. This procedure will make you more suitable for your role as imperial wife. You should be honored by such attention to your refinement. The bronze blade is heated in the flame until it glows, not for sterilization. Germ theory won't be discovered for another 17 centuries, but because hot metal cauterizes wounds and reduces bleeding. The smell of heated bronze mixes with incense and fierce sweat to create an atmosphere that would make modern operating rooms seem like luxury spas. When the knife touches your skin, the pain is immediate, absolute, and unlike anything you've ever experienced. It's not just physical agony, it's the sensation of your identity being carved away with surgical precision. You scream, of course, but the sound is muffled by the leather bit between your teeth and absorbed by stone walls that have heard this song many times before. The procedure itself takes less time than you'd expect, but feels like an eternity. Bronze cuts through flesh with the efficiency of practice, blood flows with the inevitability of gravity, and your childhood ends with the finality of a door slamming shut. The surgeon works with the focused concentration of a craftsman, occasionally pausing to wipe his hands or adjust his grip on instruments slick with your life force. Recovery, if you can call it that, involves lying on a stone table while your body tries to process what's just been done to it. The pain is constant, throbbing, a reminder with every heartbeat that you're no longer what you were when you woke up this morning. Infection is a real possibility. Most patients who survive the surgery die from fever within a week, but that's a problem for tomorrow's you to worry about. If you survive the surgery, congratulations. Now you're truly trapped in this golden cage, because there's no going back from what's been done to you. You're no longer a boy who might escape and return to his village. You're a eunuch who belongs to Caesar, a living doll whose modifications make you perfect for your new role as imperial entertainment. Every morning you wake up wondering if today you'll be a wife or a corpse, and that's not paranoia. It's the reality of imperial romance where love is measured in survival and affection is calculated in days remaining. Your new life as Caesar's favorite plaything begins before dawn with the efficiency of a military operation disguised as luxury, because in Rome, even your degradation must be performed with style. The morning routine is choreographed with the precision of a gladiatorial combat. Slaves attend to your every need, oiling your skin until it gleams like polished marble, arranging your hair with the concentration of architects building monuments, and painting your face with cosmetics that cost more than a farmer's yearly wages. But this isn't vanity. It's survival disguised as beauty, because looking tired might get you discarded, looking eager might get you punished, and looking perfect might buy you another day of breathing. The master prefers the blue silk today, your dresser murmurs while applying kohl around your eyes with the focus of someone defusing a bomb, because in a way, he is. Your appearance isn't just aesthetic, it's political. Every fold of fabric, every curl of hair, every shade of makeup sends a message about Caesar's taste, his power, his divine favor. You're not just wearing clothes, you're wearing his reputation. Your chambers, while luxurious, are designed for display rather than comfort. Marble floors that stay cold year-round, silk curtains that flutter with every breeze to create movement for observers. Furniture positioned to showcase your form from every angle. Even your bed is a stage, raised on a platform so visitors can admire Caesar's latest acquisition from the proper viewing distance. The daily schedule revolves entirely around imperial whims. You might spend hours posed like a living statue while Caesar discusses military strategy with his generals, your presence serving as both decoration and demonstration of his power. Or you could be summoned to private dinners where you're expected to recline gracefully, speak only when addressed, and laugh at jokes that aren't funny while pretending wine doesn't taste like vinegar when you're terrified. Sexual servitude is presented as privilege, wrapped in silk and perfumed with expensive oils. You're told repeatedly how fortunate you are to receive the emperor's attention, how many would kill for your position, how divine favor flows through imperial touch. The reality is more clinical, scheduled encounters where your body performs according to script while your mind retreats to whatever safe space you can construct in the corners of your consciousness. You please me, Caesar might say after using you like furniture, and you're expected to glow with gratitude rather than wince from pain. These moments of imperial satisfaction are your currency, buying you meals, shelter, and the temporary illusion of security. But they're also reminders that you exist entirely at his pleasure, and pleasure can turn to displeasure faster than wine turns to vinegar. Your education continues even after the initial training. You learn to read Caesar's moods in the flicker of his eyes, to anticipate his needs before he expresses them, to become so attuned to his desires that you practically disappear as an individual. It's psychological conditioning disguised as intimacy, where love becomes indistinguishable from Stockholm Syndrome and affection is measured in survival rates. The other palace inhabitants treat you with the careful politeness reserved for dangerous animals. Servants bow appropriately but avoid eye contact, knowing that today's favorite could be tomorrow's cautionary tale. Guards maintain professional distance, understanding that protecting you might mean protecting themselves from imperial wrath if anything happens to Caesar's precious toy. But even emperors get bored with their toys, and you can feel the attention shifting like sand in an hourglass, each grain marking time until your novelty expires and Caesar's divine love turns into divine indifference. The banquet hall fills with laughter, but you know you're the main course, and that's not metaphor. It's the brutal reality of Roman imperial entertainment where human dignity is served alongside the wine, and your humiliation is the evening's primary amusement. Imperial parties aren't just social gatherings, they're elaborate theatres of power where Caesar displays his wealth, his taste, and his absolute authority over human life. The guests, senators, generals, wealthy merchants, foreign dignitaries, arrive in their finest togas and jewelry, their conversations flowing like wine while you stand naked except for golden chains, a living decoration that breathes and bleeds and occasionally whimpers when no one important is listening. "Bring out the entertainment," Caesar announces with the casual authority of someone ordering more bread, and you realize with growing horror that you are the entertainment. Not a performer, not a participant, but a prop in whatever twisted spectacle he's designed for tonight's amusement. The guests lean forward with the anticipation of people attending a gladiatorial match, except the arena is a dining room and the gladiator is a terrified boy who used to have a name. The performances vary depending on Caesar's mood and the audience's sophistication. Sometimes you're required to dance, your movements choreographed to display your body from every angle, while maintaining the fiction that this is art rather than exploitation. Other times you're positioned like a living statue, holding poses for hours while guests discuss your form like critics examining marble, their hands occasionally wandering to test the quality of imperial property. Sexual performances are presented as divine theatre, religious ceremonies honoring the gods of pleasure and power. You might be required to demonstrate techniques with other concubines while the audience offers commentary and suggestions, their voices growing louder and cruder as the wine flows. The applause that follows feels like mockery disguised as appreciation, each clap a reminder that your most intimate moments have become public entertainment. Such grace, a senator might comment while watching you perform acts that would make prostitutes blush, his tone carrying the same appreciation he might show for a well-trained horse or a particularly fine vintage. You smile and bow gracefully because showing disgust or pain would ruin the illusion that you're a willing participant in your own degradation. The worst part isn't the physical acts, it's the psychological manipulation that frames everything as honor. You're told repeatedly how fortunate you are to entertain such distinguished guests, how your beauty brings glory to the empire, how Caesar's generosity in sharing you demonstrates his divine magnanimity. The language of privilege disguises the reality of abuse, making you complicit in your own exploitation. Between performances, you're displayed like artwork, positioned near the dining couches where guests can examine you while eating. Conversations flow around you as if you're furniture, discussions of military campaigns, trade agreements, political marriages, while hands occasionally reach out to test your skin, your hair, your responsiveness to touch. You're expected to remain perfectly still, a breathing sculpture that occasionally shivers when fingers trace patterns across your flesh. The evening's climax often involves competitions where guests bid for temporary use of imperial property. Not with money, that would be crass, but with favors, information, political support. You watch your body being auctioned in diplomatic language while maintaining the serene expression of someone honored to serve the empire's interests. When individual torture isn't enough entertainment, there's always the option of sharing you with multiple guests simultaneously, because apparently even Roman orgies need a centerpiece. The emperor's smile could mean affection or your funeral, and that uncertainty is the most terrifying part of imperial love, not knowing whether his next gesture will be a caress or a command for your execution. Living with an emperor's affection is like sharing a bed with a sleeping volcano, beautiful, warm, and capable of destroying you without warning. Caesar's moods shift like Mediterranean weather, calm one moment, violent the next, with no reliable pattern to predict the storms. You learn to read the microscopic signs, the way his fingers drum against his wine cup when he's irritated, how his smile doesn't quite reach his eyes when he's planning something unpleasant. The particular tone he uses when addressing servants before someone disappears permanently. "My beautiful boy," he might say while stroking your hair with the same hand that signed death warrants before breakfast, his voice carrying genuine warmth that makes the threat even more terrifying. Because this isn't calculated cruelty, it's the casual violence of absolute power, where love and murder can coexist in the same sentence without irony. The triggers for imperial displeasure are impossible to predict. You might be punished for looking too eager, too reluctant, too happy, too sad, or simply for existing on a day when Caesar woke up feeling divine wrath instead of divine love. A senator's unflattering comment about your appearance could result in your flogging. A bad report from the provinces might mean you spend the night chained in the basement while Caesar works through his frustrations. Physical violence is presented as correction, education, or even affection, depending on Caesar's interpretation of events. "I do this because I love you," he explains while having you beaten for some imagined slight, his logic as twisted as his smile. The pain is supposed to make you better, more grateful, more worthy of imperial attention. The bruises are love letters written in purple and yellow across your skin. But the psychological torture is worse than any physical punishment. Caesar delights in keeping you off balance, alternating between lavish gifts and cruel deprivation, passionate embraces and cold indifference. One day you're his beloved companion, dining on delicacies and wearing silk. The next you're sleeping on stone floors and eating scraps, wondering what you did wrong and how to fix it. "You seem distant today," he observes with the tone of someone noting the weather, and you realize this is a test. Show too much emotion and you're being manipulative. Show too little and you're ungrateful. The correct response exists somewhere in a narrow band between enthusiasm and despair, and finding it requires the precision of a tightrope walker performing over a pit of spikes. The other palace inhabitants watch these mood swings with the fascination of people observing natural disasters from a safe distance. They've seen favorites rise and fall, witnessed the transformation from beloved to forgotten to dead. Your current status as Imperial darling doesn't protect you, it just makes your eventual downfall more entertaining for the audience. Sleep becomes impossible when you're sharing a bed with someone who might strangle you in his dreams. You lie awake listening to his breathing, trying to determine whether the sounds he makes are snores or growls, whether the hand reaching across the bed seeks comfort or your throat. Every night is a gamble with your life as the stakes. The most terrifying moments come when Caesar is in a good mood, because his happiness often requires someone else's suffering. "Let's have some fun," he might announce with genuine enthusiasm, and you know that his idea of entertainment will involve your pain, your humiliation, or your participation in someone else's destruction. When individual emperors aren't enough to satisfy their appetites for cruelty, there's always the option of sharing you with other members of the imperial family, because apparently divine love is best expressed through group activities. Like a rental car, but the damage is to your soul, and there's no insurance policy that covers what happens when you're traded between Roman nobles like a particularly expensive piece of furniture that screams. Your value as imperial property doesn't end with one emperor. It begins there, because in the twisted economics of Roman power, sharing your suffering is considered generosity. The imperial court operates on a complex system of favors, debts, and political maneuvering where human beings serve as currency. When Caesar grows bored with you, or when political alliances shift, or when he simply wants to demonstrate his magnanimity, you might find yourself gifted to a senator, a general, or a foreign dignitary like a bottle of fine wine with a pulse. The emperor wishes to honor you with his friendship, your keeper explains while preparing you for transfer to your new owner, his voice carrying the tone of someone announcing a promotion rather than a sale. Senator Marcus has expressed particular interest in your talents. The word talents hangs in the air like incense, sweet-smelling but ultimately toxic. Your new master's villa is different from the imperial palace, smaller, more intimate, but no less dangerous. Senator Marcus is a man who's climbed the political ladder by stepping on the backs of anyone foolish enough to trust him, and his household reflects his particular tastes. Where Caesar collected concubines like trophies, Marcus treats them like laboratory specimens in an ongoing experiment in human degradation. The other slaves in the household eye you with a mixture of pity and calculation. You're fresh meat in a den of survivors, and everyone knows that in the brutal hierarchy of Roman slavery, your arrival means someone else might be moving down the food chain. The veteran concubines, boys who've been here for years, watch you with the hollow eyes of people who've forgotten what hope looks like. "Rule 1, whispers a boy named Lucius during your first night, his voice barely audible over the sound of distant laughter from the dining room. "Never look happy. Happy slaves make Marcus suspicious. Rule 2, never look sad. Sad slaves remind him of his own mortality. Rule 3, never look at all, if you can help it." The routine here is different but equally degrading. Where Caesar demanded performance, Marcus demands submission. Where the emperor wanted entertainment, the senator wants control. You're not just serving his physical desires, you're feeding his psychological need to dominate, to break, to reduce human beings to their component parts and rebuild them according to his specifications. But Marcus isn't your only master. Roman society operates on a complex web of social obligations, and wealthy men often share their possessions as a form of networking. You might spend Monday with Marcus, Tuesday with his business partner, Wednesday with a visiting dignitary from Gaul, and Thursday with whoever won you in a dice game the night before. Each master has different preferences, different cruelties, different ways of reminding you that you exist entirely at their pleasure. One prefers psychological torture, another physical pain, a third the kind of humiliation that makes you question whether death might be preferable to breathing. You learn to read faces, to anticipate moods, to become whatever each man needs you to be, while slowly losing track of who you actually are. The worst part isn't the physical abuse, it's the casual nature of it all. You're passed around dinner parties like an appetizer, discussed in front of guests like a piece of art, evaluated and critiqued while you stand naked and silent. Your body becomes a conversation piece, your suffering a form of entertainment, your humanity an inconvenient detail that everyone politely ignores. And through it all, you're expected to be grateful. Grateful for the attention, grateful for the variety, grateful that these important men find you worthy of their time and energy. The language of privilege disguises the reality of exploitation, making you complicit in your own destruction while maintaining the fiction that this is somehow an honor. The other concubines aren't your friends, they're your competition, because in this twisted economy, there's always someone younger, prettier, more broken waiting to take your place. Kill or be killed, but make it look like seduction, the oldest concubine advises, with the weary wisdom of someone who's survived by stepping on the bodies of those who didn't. Welcome to the Roman concubine hierarchy, where every smile hides a knife and every friendship is a temporary alliance in an ongoing war for survival. The pecking order among imperial property is as rigid and brutal as any military structure. At the top are the favorites, boys who've managed to capture and hold an emperor's attention long enough to gain some measure of protection. They wear silk, eat decent food, and sleep in actual beds instead of straw mats. But their position is precarious, dependent entirely on maintaining their master's interest while navigating the jealousy of everyone below them. Below the favorites are the regulars, concubines who've proven their usefulness but haven't achieved special status. They're the workhorses of the system, reliable, experienced, and slowly aging out of their prime. They know the routines, understand the rules, and have learned to survive by being competent rather than exceptional. At the bottom are the newcomers, the broken and the discarded. Fresh arrivals like yourself, boys who've been damaged by previous masters, and those who've fallen from grace. This is where the real brutality happens, because everyone in this tier is fighting desperately to climb higher while the system actively works to keep them down. Competition isn't just encouraged, it's engineered. Masters deliberately create situations where concubines must compete for basic necessities. Better food, warmer clothing, a night without sexual service. They pit you against each other in contests of beauty, skill, or degradation, turning survival into a spectator sport where the audience bets on who will break first. Marcus likes the new boy, someone whispers during the evening meal, and you feel every eye in the room turn toward you with the intensity of predators evaluating prey. Being noticed is dangerous, but being ignored is fatal. You're walking a tightrope between visibility and vulnerability, trying to attract just enough attention to survive without becoming such a threat that the others decide to eliminate you. Alliances form and dissolve like morning mist. Today's protector might be tomorrow's betrayer, depending on how the political winds shift. You learn to share information carefully, to offer help strategically, to build relationships that might save your life while never forgetting that everyone around you would sacrifice you to save themselves. The psychological warfare is constant and sophisticated. Rumors are spread about who's losing favor, who's planning to escape, who's been marked for disposal. Boys turn against each other over scraps of attention, fragments of hope, the possibility of advancement. The masters watch this internal destruction with amusement, understanding that slaves who are busy fighting each other have no energy left to fight their oppressors. Violence between concubines is common but carefully hidden. A rival might be poisoned with herbs stolen from the kitchen, pushed downstairs during the night, or simply driven to suicide through systematic psychological torture. Deaths are explained as accidents, illnesses, or the inevitable result of a weak constitution. No one investigates too closely because no one really cares. The most successful survivors learn to play multiple games simultaneously. They cultivate relationships with the masters while maintaining careful alliances with other slaves. They share just enough information to seem trustworthy without revealing anything that could be used against them. They help others when it's safe and abandon them when it's necessary. But the system is designed to prevent solidarity. Just when you think you've found genuine friendship, genuine support, the masters change the rules. They promote your ally to a higher position, or sell them to another household, or simply eliminate them to remind everyone that attachments are luxuries that slaves can't afford. The psychological toll is enormous. You're constantly calculating, constantly performing, constantly afraid. Trust becomes impossible. Friendship becomes dangerous, and love becomes a weapon that others can use against you. You learn to smile while planning betrayal, to offer comfort while plotting survival, to maintain the appearance of humanity while slowly losing your soul. But sometimes you're not competing with other boys. You're being sold like livestock at market, and that's when you discover that even slavery has a basement level. You stand naked on marble while men bid on your body parts, and that's not hyperbole. It's the brutal reality of the Roman slave market, where human beings are evaluated, priced, and purchased with less ceremony than buying a horse. Welcome to the resale market for imperial property, where your worth is calculated in coins and your future is determined by whoever has the deepest pockets and the darkest imagination. The auction house is a monument to human commodification, a marble-columned building where the screams of the desperate echo off polished walls, while wealthy Romans sip wine and discuss their next purchase. You're not the only concubine being sold today. There's an entire catalogue of human misery on display, each person representing someone's financial investment and someone else's potential entertainment. Your preparation for sale is conducted with the clinical efficiency of livestock management. You're bathed, oiled, and positioned to display your body from every angle, while potential buyers examine you like merchants evaluating fabric. They check your teeth, test your muscle tone, and assess your responsiveness to commands with the casual authority of people who've never questioned their right to own other human beings. This one has good bone structure, a potential buyer observes while tilting your chin toward the light, his fingers cold and impersonal as they probe your face for signs of disease or defect. Germanic bloodline, probably. Look at those eyes, very fashionable among the eastern provinces these days. The Syrian governors have developed quite a taste for northern features. The auctioneer presents you with the enthusiasm of a merchant hawking exotic spices, listing your qualities like items in a catalogue. Trained in the imperial household, he announces to the crowd, his voice carrying across the marble hall like a death sentence wrapped in commercial language. Experienced in all forms of service, compliant and recently modified for enhanced performance. The crowd murmurs appreciatively at the mention of your castration, because apparently even your surgical mutilation is a selling point. Bidding begins with the casual efficiency of a business transaction, because that's exactly what it is. Wealthy Romans compete for human property with the same enthusiasm they might show for a prized racehorse or a particularly fine statue. Your price climbs higher with each raised hand, and you realize with growing horror that your worth as a human being is being calculated in real time by people who see you as an investment opportunity. 50 denarii, calls out a fat merchant whose toga strains against his belly like a sail in a strong wind. 75, counters a thin senator whose eyes glitter with the kind of hunger that makes your skin crawl. 100, declares a foreign dignitary whose accent suggests he's from one of the eastern provinces where Roman decadence has taken on distinctly local flavors. The bidding war continues while you stand motionless on the auction block, your body on display like merchandise in Rome's most exclusive market. Each bid represents not just money, but a different kind of future suffering, a different master with different cruelties, a different way of being broken down and rebuilt according to someone else's specifications. The crowd evaluates you with the expertise of people who've done this before. They discuss your potential like investors analyzing stock options, weighing the costs and benefits of ownership against the expected return on their investment. Some want you for personal use, others for resale to clients in distant provinces, a few for purposes they discuss in whispers that make even hardened slave traders look uncomfortable. Sold to the representative of Governor Quintus for 150 denarii, the auctioneer finally declares, and your fate is sealed with the finality of a judge's gavel. You're no longer imperial property, you're provincial merchandise, purchased for shipment to some distant corner of the empire where Roman law is more suggestion than requirement. The transaction is completed with paperwork that's more thorough than most modern contracts. Bills of sale, ownership transfers, health guarantees. The Romans document everything with the kind of bureaucratic precision that would make modern governments jealous. Your new owner receives a certificate of authenticity, like you're a piece of art being added to a collection. But even if you win the bidding war and end up with a relatively benign master, age is undefeated, and youth is the only currency that matters in the concubine trade. In Rome, growing old as a concubine is a death sentence with wrinkles, and that's not hyperbole. It's the brutal mathematics of imperial desire, where your expiration date is written in crow's feet and grey hairs. The moment your skin starts to lose its luminous perfection, the moment your body begins to show the wear of years of use, you transform from precious property to inconvenient liability, faster than wine turns to vinegar in the Mediterranean sun. The signs begin subtly, almost imperceptibly. A line around your eyes that makeup can't quite hide, a softness in your jaw that no amount of oil and massage can tighten, the first silver thread in hair that once gleamed like spun gold. In the modern world, these might be called distinguished mature, the natural progression of life. In Imperial Rome, they're called evidence that your usefulness is expiring. Your handlers notice first, their eyes trained to spot depreciation, like merchants evaluating livestock at market. The boy is looking tired, they murmur among themselves, and you know they're not talking about sleep. They're talking about replacement, about the younger, fresher faces being trained in the villa outside Rome, about the inevitable transition from favourite to forgotten. The emperor's attention begins to wander, his gaze lingering less on your form and more on the new arrivals who still carry the bloom of youth like expensive perfume. You feel it in the way his hands move across your skin, searching for the firmness that's no longer there, the way his eyes drift during intimate moments, already imagining someone else in your place. Perhaps you'd prefer to rest today, becomes a common suggestion, and you realize with growing horror that rest is just a polite word for irrelevance. The silk tunics become less elaborate, the jewelry less precious, the invitations to imperial functions less frequent. You're being phased out with the gentle efficiency of someone being eased into retirement, except retirement in your case means disposal. The other concubines watch your decline with a mixture of pity and calculation. The younger ones see their own future written in your fading beauty, while the older ones recognize a fellow traveler on the road to obsolescence. There's no solidarity in shared suffering, only the desperate scramble to delay the inevitable by any means necessary. You try everything to halt the march of time. Special oils imported from Egypt, exercises designed to maintain flexibility, diets that promise to preserve youth. But time is the one enemy that even imperial power can't defeat, and your body continues its relentless transformation from object of desire to reminder of mortality. The cruelest part is how gradually it happens. Not a sudden fall from grace, but a slow slide into irrelevance, each day bringing smaller humiliations, fewer privileges, less attention. You're still alive, still breathing, still capable of thought and feeling, but in the eyes of those who own you, you're already dead. Some try to escape, but the empire has long arms and longer memories, and running away as an aging eunuch with no money, no family, and no marketable skills beyond sexual service is a gamble with odds worse than gladiatorial combat. You run through Roman streets, but freedom is a mirage that recedes with every desperate step, and that's the cruel irony of escape. The very modifications that marked you as imperial property also mark you as a fugitive who can never truly disappear into the crowd. The planning begins in whispered conversations with other slaves, desperate schemes hatched in the dark corners of villas where the torchlight doesn't reach. Maps are memorized, routes are discussed, contacts are cultivated among the networks of freedmen and slaves who move through the empire's shadows like ghosts with coins and connections. Your first attempt might be simple, walking out during a festival when the household is distracted, blending into the crowds of revelers who flood the streets during religious celebrations. You wrap yourself in a stolen cloak, keep your head down, and try to move like a free man rather than property learning to walk without permission. But the Empire's surveillance network is more sophisticated than you imagined. Slave catchers patrol the roads, bounty hunters scan the crowds, and informants lurk in every tavern and boarding house. Your castrated state makes you memorable, distinctive, impossible to hide among the bearded men who populate the Roman world. Looking for someone? the slave catcher asks, with the casual authority of someone who's done this many times before, his hand already reaching for the chains that will drag you back to face punishment that will make your previous suffering seem like gentle massage. The punishments for escape attempts are designed to be educational, both for you and for anyone else who might be considering similar foolishness. Flogging is standard, but creative masters might prefer branding, mutilation, or psychological torture that breaks your spirit more thoroughly than any physical pain. Some concubines try to buy their freedom, saving coins from tips and gifts, hoarding silver like squirrels preparing for winter. But manumission requires your master's consent, and masters rarely free property that still has value, especially property that knows too many imperial secrets to be safely released into the world. Others attempt to flee to distant provinces where Roman law is more suggestion than requirement, where a clever eunuch might reinvent himself as a merchant, a scribe, or a temple servant. But the roads are dangerous, bandits are common, and traveling alone as an obvious former slave is like painting a target on your back. The most desperate try to reach the Germanic tribes beyond the frontier, where Roman authority ends and barbarian freedom begins. But crossing the Rhine or the Danube requires connections, money, and luck that few possess. Most who attempt it end up dead in ditches or recaptured before they reach the first milestone. Even if you succeed in escaping the immediate vicinity, the psychological chains prove harder to break than the physical ones. Years of conditioning have taught you to seek permission, to anticipate needs, to exist entirely in relation to others' desires. Freedom, when you taste it, feels less like liberation and more like terrifying emptiness. For those who can't escape, there are secret networks of resistance, underground alliances among slaves who share information, provide mutual protection, and occasionally coordinate acts of sabotage that give them the illusion of agency in lives defined by powerlessness. In the darkest corners, broken boys find each other, and that's where the real rebellion begins, not in grand gestures or dramatic escapes, but in whispered conversations and shared glances that say, "You are not alone in this hell." The resistance isn't organized like a military campaign or a political movement. It's more like a nervous system, a network of connections that spreads information, provides mutual support, and occasionally coordinates small acts of defiance that help preserve whatever fragments of humanity survived the systematic dehumanization of imperial slavery. Communication happens in code, through gestures and phrases that sound innocent to masters but carry deeper meaning to those who know how to listen. The wine is particularly sweet today, might mean a new shipment of boys has arrived. The master seems tired, could indicate an opportunity for mischief or escape. The network includes not just concubines but kitchen slaves, stable hands, guards, and even some freedmen who remember their own days in chains. Information flows through this underground system like water through hidden channels, which masters are cruel, which are kind, which guards can be bribed, which routes lead to safety. Mutual protection is crucial when individual resistance is impossible. If one boy is being singled out for particularly brutal treatment, others might create distractions, share food, or simply provide the kind of human contact that reminds him he's still a person despite what's being done to his body. Small acts of sabotage provide psychological relief even when they accomplish little practical change. Spilling wine on expensive silk, accidentally breaking precious objects, spreading rumors that cause friction between masters. These tiny rebellions help maintain the illusion of agency in lives where choice has been surgically removed. The network also serves as an early warning system. When masters are planning to dispose of aging concubines, when new punishments are being considered, when political changes might affect the household, information spreads through the slave quarters faster than gossip in a marketplace. Some members of the network specialize in specific skills. There's the boy who can pick locks, the one who knows which herbs can induce illness convincing enough to avoid unwanted attention, the one who maintains contacts with freedmen who might help with escape attempts. Trust is both essential and dangerous. The wrong word to the wrong person can result in torture, execution, or worse. Being sold to masters whose cruelty makes your current situation seem like paradise. Every alliance is a calculated risk, every friendship a potential betrayal. The most successful resistance comes from those who learn to play the long game. who understand that survival sometimes requires collaboration with the system while secretly working to undermine it. They become trusted servants, confidants, even advisors, all while maintaining their connections to the underground network that keeps hope alive in the darkest places. But even resistance has its limits when facing Roman medicine, where the line between healing and torture is determined entirely by the political needs of those in power. The physician's tools look more like torture devices, and that's not hyperbole. It's the brutal reality of Roman medicine, where the cure is often worse than the disease. The doctors are basically butchers with better marketing, and your body is treated like a broken chariot that needs creative repairs. The medical chamber where your humanity will be further diminished is surprisingly clean by Roman standards, which is to say it's been swept recently, and the bloodstains from the previous patient have been mostly scrubbed away. Stone walls, marble table, bronze instruments that gleam with the kind of polish that suggests they're used frequently and maintained with professional pride by people who've forgotten what mercy looks like. Your physician, if we can dignify him with that title, is a Greek slave who's performed these procedures hundreds of times on imperial property. He's efficient, experienced, and completely indifferent to your terror because to him, you're just another job, another body on the table, another set of organs to be modified according to the specific requirements of Roman aesthetics and imperial pleasure. The emperor wishes you to be enhanced, he explains while examining his instruments with the care of an artist selecting brushes, except his canvas is your flesh and his masterpiece will be your permanent disfigurement. These procedures will make you more suitable for your elevated role in the imperial household. You should be honored by such attention to your refinement. The modifications aren't just about castration, that was just the beginning of your transformation from human being to living doll. Roman medicine has developed sophisticated techniques for altering concubines to better serve imperial tastes. Hormone treatments using animal extracts, surgical procedures to feminize features, even experimental operations to modify voice pitch and body proportions. The bronze instruments are heated in flames, not for sterilization. Germ theory won't be discovered for another 17 centuries, but because hot metal cauterizes wounds and reduces bleeding. The smell of heated bronze mixes with incense and fear sweat to create an atmosphere that would make modern operating rooms seem like luxury spas in comparison. This will help maintain your youthful appearance, the physician continues, while preparing a mixture of herbs and animal hormones that will be injected directly into your bloodstream. The emperor prefers his favorites to remain unchanged by the passage of time. The irony isn't lost on you that preserving your youth requires procedures that make you feel ancient with pain. Recovery involves lying on a stone table while your body tries to process what's just been done to it. The pain is constant, throbbing, a reminder with every heartbeat that you're no longer what you were when you woke up this morning. Infection is a real possibility. Most patients who survive the initial procedures die from fever within a week, but that's a problem for tomorrow's you to worry about. The psychological impact is perhaps worse than the physical trauma. Each procedure strips away another layer of your identity, another connection to the person you used to be. You're being systematically transformed into someone else's vision of perfection, your body becoming a canvas for imperial fantasies while your mind retreats to whatever safe spaces it can construct. But the most insidious part is how it's all presented as privilege, as enhancement, as improvement. You're told repeatedly how fortunate you are to receive such advanced medical attention, how these procedures will elevate your status and increase your value. The language of betterment disguises the reality of mutilation, making you complicit in your own destruction. When medicine fails to solve the problem of your continued existence, there's always the final option. The one choice that remains entirely yours, even in a world where everything else has been taken away. When death becomes your only act of rebellion, and that's not poetry, it's the mathematical conclusion of a life where every other option has been systematically eliminated by people who own your body but can never quite capture your soul. The realization comes slowly, like dawn breaking over a battlefield where you're the only casualty that matters. You're lying on your stone bed, body aching from the latest medical enhancement, mind calculating the years ahead of service, degradation, and slow dissolution of whatever remains of your humanity. The numbers don't add up to anything resembling a life worth living. Suicide in the Roman Empire isn't just accepted, it's sometimes admired, especially among the educated classes who view it as the ultimate expression of philosophical principle. Stoics like Seneca wrote extensively about choosing one's own death as the final act of a free person. Of course, they were writing about noble Romans making dignified exits, not broken concubines seeking escape from imperial property status. The methods available to you are limited but effective. Poison is the preferred choice of the sophisticated, a quick drink of hemlock or a carefully prepared mixture of herbs that will stop your heart before the pain becomes unbearable. But poison requires connections, money, or access to gardens where the right plants grow, none of which you possess. Hanging is more accessible, but requires privacy and time, both of which are luxuries in a household where you're constantly monitored. The silk cords from your tunics might work, or the leather straps from sandals, but finding a moment alone long enough to complete the act is nearly impossible when your value as property means someone is always watching. Drowning offers another option if you can reach the villa's ornamental pools or the nearby river. The water is cold, the process relatively quick, and there's something poetic about returning to the element that gave life while seeking its opposite. But drowning requires the kind of determination that's hard to maintain when survival instincts kick in and your body fights against your mind's decision. The most Roman method is opening your veins in a warm bath, letting your life flow out with the dignity of someone choosing their own terms. It's clean, quiet, and allows for final words, final thoughts, final moments of control over a life that's been controlled by others for so long. The warm water eases the pain and speeds the process, turning death into something almost peaceful. But suicide isn't just about method, it's about meaning. In a world where you've been stripped of agency, choice, and identity, the decision to die becomes the ultimate assertion of selfhood. It's the one thing your masters can't take from you, the final territory where their ownership ends and your sovereignty begins. The psychological preparation is perhaps harder than the physical act. You have to reconcile yourself not just to dying, but to the waste of whatever potential your life might have held. You think about the village you'll never see again, the family who sold you into this fate, the dreams that died long before your body will. Some concubines leave messages, scratched into stone walls, whispered to trusted friends, or simply held in their hearts as final thoughts. Others choose silence, letting their absence speak for itself. The act becomes its own statement, a final review of the imperial system that created the conditions where death seems preferable to continued existence. But not everyone chooses this path. Some find ways to endure, to survive, to outlast their tormentors, and emerge from the other side of hell with their humanity somehow intact. These are the ones whose stories we turn to next. Freedom tastes like ashes when your soul is already dead, and that's the cruel irony of survival. Sometimes living through hell is harder than dying in it, especially when the world expects you to be grateful for the privilege of breathing. The survivors of imperial concubinage are walking contradictions, free men who will never be free, former slaves who carry their chains invisibly, broken boys who grew into hollow men with the kind of emptiness that echoes when they laugh. They exist in the margins of Roman society, neither fully accepted nor entirely rejected, living reminders of the empire's capacity for both cruelty and occasional mercy. Some survivors are freed through imperial whim, a dying emperor's last act of conscience, a new ruler's desire to distance himself from his predecessor's excesses, or simply the practical reality that aging concubines cost more to maintain than they're worth. The manumission papers that grant freedom are written on parchment, but the psychological chains are forged from experience and trauma that no legal document can dissolve. Others escape through the death of their masters, inheriting a kind of freedom by default when the person who owned them dies without making specific provisions for their continued enslavement. These men find themselves suddenly adrift in a world that has no clear place for former imperial property. Their value as human beings having been so thoroughly destroyed that rebuilding an identity becomes an archaeological project. The practical challenges of post-slavery life are enormous. Most survivors have no money, no family connections, no marketable skills beyond sexual service. They're too damaged for normal relationships, too recognizable for anonymity, too traumatized for the kind of emotional stability that employment requires. Many end up as beggars, prostitutes, or servants in households that pay them just enough to survive while treating them with the casual contempt reserved for people who've been broken by better men. Marcus, a former concubine of Emperor Hadrian, spends his days copying scrolls in a scriptorium, his hands steady enough for careful lettering, but shaking whenever he hears footsteps approaching from behind. He lives alone in a small room above a bakery, the smell of bread reminding him daily of the luxury he once knew and the price he paid for it. He speaks to no one about his past, but the careful way he moves through crowds, the way he flinches at unexpected touch, tells the story his silence tries to hide. Gaius, who survived 3 different emperors and somehow lived to see his 40th birthday, runs a small tavern near the docks where sailors and merchants drink wine and tell lies about their adventures. He listens to their stories with the patience of someone who's heard worse, serves their drinks with hands that remember holding different kinds of cups, and closes his shop each night wondering if the nightmares will come again. The psychological scars are deeper than any physical modification. Survivors struggle with intimacy, trust, and the basic human connections that most people take for granted. They've been trained to anticipate needs, to read moods, to become whatever others want them to be, and unlearning those survival mechanisms proves nearly impossible. Freedom means making choices, but choice requires a sense of self that's been systematically destroyed. Some find solace in philosophy, drawn to Stoic teachings about endurance and the inner life that can't be touched by external circumstances. Others turn to religion, seeking in divine love the acceptance they never found in human relationships. A few become advocates for other slaves, using their knowledge of the system to help where they can, though always carefully, always quietly, always aware that their own freedom is conditional and revocable. But perhaps the most remarkable thing about the survivors is that they survive at all. In a world designed to break them completely, they find ways to piece together some version of a life. It's not the life they would have chosen, not the life they deserved, but it's theirs. And sometimes, in the quiet moments between memory and hope, that's enough. So after a lifetime of Imperial love, could you have survived? The question isn't just about physical endurance, it's about whether any part of the person you were could have remained intact after everything the Empire tried to take away. And somehow, they called this civilization, though the only thing civilized about it was how efficiently it organized human suffering into profitable entertainment for people who never questioned their right to own other human beings like expensive furniture that screamed. So, how was your day as a Roman male concubine? You've woken up in a golden cage, discovered that your childhood ended at a slave market, spent your morning being surgically modified for imperial pleasure, navigated the treacherous waters of palace politics where everyone smiles while sharpening knives, survived multiple forms of systematic abuse disguised as divine favor, watched your own identity dissolve like salt in water, and ended up either dead by your own hand or alive but hollow. A walking monument to the human cost of absolute power. Congratulations, you've experienced the true reality of Roman imperial love, where affection is ownership with poetry, devotion is slavery with silk sheets, and romance is rape with better marketing. But let's be honest, you probably wouldn't have made it past the auction block. The romanticized image of Roman decadence, beautiful boys lounging in marble baths, emperors as passionate lovers, the empire as a playground of sophisticated pleasure, is a carefully constructed fantasy that ignores the brutal reality of systematic human trafficking. The truth is that Roman concubinage was slavery with better jewelry and more elaborate funeral arrangements. You weren't a lover. You were a living sex toy with a pulse, your value measured entirely by your ability to please masters who could legally kill you for any reason or no reason at all. Once you failed at that task, or simply aged out of usefulness, you became expendable, and expendable concubines had a habit of dying in convenient accidents or sudden illnesses. The system was designed to eliminate you with the efficiency of a well-oiled execution machine. Your masters could legally rape, torture, and murder you with the blessing of both law and society. Your family would abandon you the moment supporting you became politically costly, their love conditional on your continued invisibility. Your fellow slaves would betray you to secure their own survival, learning early that solidarity is a luxury that property can't afford. Yet somehow, through all of this institutional brutality and systematic dehumanization disguised as divine order, some concubines managed to survive and even find moments of humanity. They did it through a combination of cunning, luck, and the ability to preserve some small corner of their souls that the Empire couldn't touch, no matter how hard it tried. They endured not because the system was merciful, but because humans are stubborn in ways that even absolute power can't completely crush. They found ways to resist, to remember, to remain human, despite everything designed to make them into objects. But for every survivor who lived to tell his story, there were dozens who died in silence, their names forgotten, their suffering unrecorded, their humanity denied. The legacy of Roman concubinage is written in blood, broken bones, and the quiet desperation of boys who understood that their survival depended on pleasing men who saw them as entertainment rather than people. They lived in golden cages that were still cages, wore silk that couldn't hide the chains, and smiled gracefully while calculating the odds of surviving another day in a world designed to consume them. The next time you read about the glory of Rome, the grandeur of the empire, the sophistication of classical civilization, remember the real cost of that glory. It was built on the backs of slaves, the bodies of concubines, and the silence of victims who had no choice but to endure what couldn't be escaped. Their stories weren't recorded in marble monuments or epic poems, but they deserve to be remembered. So could you survive a day as a Roman male concubine? Probably not. But maybe, just maybe, you'd find a way to keep some small part of yourself alive, some fragment of dignity that even emperors couldn't steal. And perhaps that's the most human thing of all, the determination to remain human, even when the world insists you're just property. Welcome to Roman love, where even the gods needed therapy, and the only happy ending was surviving long enough to die of natural causes in a world designed to kill you for someone else's pleasure, one degradation at a time.